The first thing we did in the class was create a new station. Then we made some changes, a few labs, and then we went and created a template of the station. This lab is going to teach you how to create a template of the air handler that we made. But before we make the controller template, we need to go in and change a few minor things. So I'm going to go to the wire sheet of my air handler controller, and I'm going to delete this link right here coming in from my weekly schedule. As part of the template, we're going to have this link automatically to our schedule. So I'll highlight this little knob and come up and hit the scissors and get rid of it. Then I'm going to rename this air handler 14 folder. So I'll right click it and rename it to AHU and hit OK. I'll double click the folder and just make sure that nothing broke in my graphic. If you had something break in your graphic, if you have values that aren't displaying, you may not have finished the relativization lab correctly. If you have any questions, let me know. If something doesn't display the way you were expecting it to, let me know and we'll get that fixed for you. Then I'll right click on my AHU folder and make a template. When we created our station template, I told you not to come down and hit the save button until we were done with the template. The same rule applies here when we're creating our air handler template. If you hit the save button before we're done, it's going to save your template and kick you out. So just make sure you don't hit the save button until I tell you to. I'll leave it named AHU, that's fine. I'll change the vendor. You can make the vendor whoever you want. And then I'll change the state from draft to ready. I could wait until I was done configuring the template, but I'll do it now to save a little time later. I'll make this version 1.1, and I will give it a description called AHU with graphic, and the info will be BACnet air handler. I'll click on the configuration tab and I'll expand the fan point and double click the My Part Number tag. Once it's added to the configuration window, I can come over here to the user tip and double click the space right underneath it, and I'll type enter fan part number. You'll see where this comes into play later on when we deploy the template we've created. Just go with me on this for now. I'll do the same thing with horsepower. And in the user tip, I'll type in enter fan horsepower. Then I'll select the template IO tab, and I'll expand the occupancy endpoint, and I'll double click N16. As I add it, you'll notice that it says the bind hints content is empty. The bind hints is where the magic happens. I mentioned earlier that I'd like the schedule to automatically link to my occupancy endpoint. This is how we do it. I've added the N16, but I need to tell it what to look for in the station to bind to. I'll come down to where it says bind hints and double click in the value field, and I'll type in n:type equals quote schedule Boolean schedule end quote. What we're telling it is to go out and look in the entire station for anything that's a Boolean schedule. You'll see the process here in a minute when we deploy this template. It's really cool. This is one of my favorite features in N4. So I'll hit OK. And then I'll double click the value field to the right of user tip, and I'll type select a schedule and hit OK. Then I'll click on the graphics tab. Just make sure that my graphics shows up, everything looks the way that I want it to. And at this point I should be done with my template. I'll go ahead and hit the save button. And it will create a Niagara template file called ahu.ntpl in directory templates. This is stored in my user home on my computer. I'll hit OK, and I'll go to my user home just to verify that it was created. So I'll scroll up in my nav tree, expand my file system, and expand the user home, and look for the templates folder. Expand the templates, and I have my ahu.ntpl template that was created. So verify that yours is there. If it isn't, let me know and we'll figure out what's going on. I'm going to collapse my file system, and then I'm going to scroll back down to my air handler underneath my BACnet AHU controller. Then I'll right click it and I'll delete it. All my work is gone. Everything I've done for the last few days is gone. It's okay. I created a template for it, so I'll just put it back by using my template. I'm going to right click my points folder underneath the BACnet AHU controller and go to the AX property sheet. Then I'm going to open up my template sidebar. So I've got my nav sidebar and my palette sidebar open. I'm going to add another one by clicking on the sidebars icon, and that's going to be my template sidebar. Inside of my template sidebar, I have my air handler version 1.1. I'm going to drag it over onto the property sheet of my points folder, and I'll name it AHU 14 to match my lab number, and press OK. It's asking me which schedule to select. That's pretty cool. I'll select the weekly schedule. Yours may not have another schedule in it. I added this Boolean schedule as a demonstration earlier, so you may only have one and it may automatically be selected. But if you have a couple in your station, make sure you select the weekly schedule. I'll hit OK. And then it's going to ask me to enter the fan part number and the fan horsepower. Remember, we set those user tips up in our template? This is where you get to see those user tips. So your user will see this, or your technician or whoever, when they add a templated controller, it'll prompt them to put in a value here. So for the fan part number, I'll put in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 this time, and the horsepower, maybe I'll put 150. This will be a big air handler. I'll hit OK. And it tells me it linked the template input occupancy in from the schedule's weekly schedule out. And if I expand my points folder and double click AHU 14, my graphic shows up, my points are displaying, my horsepower is 150, and my part number is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let me go to my wire sheet and make sure that my schedule actually is linked. Look at that. My schedule is linked up to my occupancy endpoint. That's it. That's how you create a template for a controller. Really, really cool stuff. This is my favorite feature of N4 right here. The amount of time that I can save by creating templates, by spending a little bit of extra time initially to create a template that I can deploy over and over again. Once I have the template deployed in my station, I can come up to the template service and double click the template service and look at all of the templates in my station. This particular controller is, the template name is AHU, it tells me the version, and it lets me know that it's up to date. So if I modify the original template, if I add something to it, I can manage those revisions and push them out to older templated controllers. You know, let me just walk through the process. I'll come up to my template in my user home, double click the AHU template, and let me make a change to my graphics. I'm going to delete my all points list. I'll save my template, And I'll change the version to 1.2. Save it. And then I will go to my template service. And you'll see that the one that's in my station is out of date. If I highlight this line, I can hit the upgrade button down at the bottom of the page. And then when I commit it, it'll remove the existing template and install the newer version. So let me hit yes. My upgrade template was successful. I'll go back down and take a look at the graphic. And you'll see that the button is gone. Huge time saver if you just take the time to wrap your head around the whole process.